Hello, I'm live and I'm here to talk about how to practice correctly. Most of you are probably practicing incorrectly. Sorry to break it to you, but I do the same thing. There's a skill to it, and part of it is you gotta have fun. And I've distilled my tips down to 7 tips, okay? 7 tips for practicing correctly. Not only so that you can advance your skills really quickly, but also so you can experience all of the benefits, the emotional, physical, and mental benefits of an effective practice. So my first tip is slowly. You gotta practice slow. You need to dance in time to the music. So if you're not dancing in time to the music, then you're ignoring the music and you're not dancing. You're just moving next to music. So you really notice this when you're practicing percussion, and that's one reason I really love to play finger cymbals and frame drum, is because when you speed up in your percussion practice, you get messy. So it's really useful to practice to a metronome when you're practicing percussion. Of course, put on a song and use songs too, and then also you can practice to silence, but there's gotta be a moment when you're practicing to a metronome because you need to practice being in time and being in rhythm. The thing about going slowly is that you can do it correctly. If you're practicing incorrectly, like you have unnecessary tension in your body and your arms are in a way that you didn't choose for them to be, then you're basically wasting your time. So slow down. And if you're in a class when things are like the exercise is moving really quickly, just half time it. Just decide for yourself to go slower, because when you are practicing quickly and correctly, it's just forming bad habits that are going to take a long time to undo. So of course, some of the time, I know some of our personalities were like, nah, I just want to go for it. Like we're like that person sitting at a drum kit, just being like everywhere, all over the place, when really we should be sitting there with a drum pad, like practicing that one stroke. So maybe do that for one song, if that's how you really like to practice, and then encourage yourself to slow the heck down. And then once you can do it correctly, then speed it up. Yeah, always right at that edge where you're just at that speed where it's like, it's a little bit challenging, but you're able to stay focused. Tip number 2 is keep it simple. If you practice too many layers at one time, you will not be getting a solid foundation on any of those layers. So if I'm gonna do a hip layer, for example, and I wanna add a chest layer, I need to get that hip layer on autopilot. Meaning that I don't have to put conscious effort into doing this. And I also don't have to put conscious effort into doing this. So it's one of those things that I've practiced over and over and over again via repetition, slowly and correctly, so many times that I can do it without thinking about it or putting much concentration to it. So you have to get to that place of autopilot on at least one of your layers before you add any additional layers. Again, if you don't do it that way, you're just gonna be forming bad habits and they're gonna take a long time to fix. So you can get good really fast if you practice correctly. That's the whole point that I'm trying to make today. Okay, tip number 3 is with ease. I know a lot of people think that they're supposed to be efforting, really pushing themselves and putting a lot of muscular strain into what they're doing. And if that's the aesthetic of the dance that you're going for, and that's the dynamic, you want a moving through molasses kind of dynamic, then yeah, put a lot of muscular effort into your movement. But the way I like to practice is with neuromuscular efficiency. So my brain is telling only the muscles I need to do the task to fire. And you can notice when you're not practicing with ease, when you start to hold your breath. Your breath should be able to flow naturally in and out without you controlling it. And if your breath is not flowing, that means that you have one too many layers, or you're going too fast, or your mind is distracted and in the gutter. So another common place to hold tension is in the shoulders and also in the jaw. Lots of jaw clenching and shoulder rising. And also in the fingers. You can see it in your fingers as well. So that's why we go slow, one layer at a time, with only recruiting the necessary muscles because then you're training your nervous system to form neuromuscular pathways that are actually efficient and effective. And you're not training your body to every time I want to do a pelvic dive. And tip number 4 is with full focus, your full mental presence on the task at hand. So this is especially apparent when you are rehearsing a choreography or a combination. When you're rehearsing a choreography that you like know pretty well, right? You know, you always mess up when your mind wanders. It's such a good feedback system. That's why I love practicing dance so much and percussion, because when I mess up or I make a mistake, mistakes are great. Mistakes are the way to learn. And what I often learn is that the reason why I messed that up or fell out of time or forgot that move or got late in the sequence is because my mind was wandering. And a lot of the times our minds are gonna wander. So it's not like I've mastered being present all the time. Nobody's done that. Maybe some monks or something. But what you're doing is you're practicing returning to the present moment as soon as you notice that you've been distracted. And the body doing something you didn't intend, or the hands on your drum doing something you didn't intend, is an immediate trigger to let you know that your mind is not focused in the present. Whereas we could be moving around our day, not dancing, not drumming, and we could let our minds go on a ride of rumination, judgment, criticism for 15 minutes before we even notice that that's happened. And then our emotions are all dysregulated. So that's one reason I love dance and drum practice, is because it's basically a meditative practice where it's teaching you to return to the present, and it's just making you aware of how often your mind wanders. And then you're just practicing the skill of saying, let me bring it back to the moment. Let me bring it back to the moment. Let me bring it back to the moment. Tip number 5 is with a benevolent attitude. Practice with a good attitude. So if you start to think, I'm really bad at this, or I am really good at this, that's always when the practice goes off track for me personally. If I judge myself or congratulate myself prematurely, then I mess up that combination that I know how to do because my mind was wandering and it was in a bad place. And also, you want to have a benevolent attitude in the fact that you have a growth mindset, like you have hope. You believe that your skills will improve, which they will with effective practice. It's not like, some people can do certain things and other people can do other things. It's like pretty much most of us are capable of doing most things. We just need to be in the right environment and have the right approach to getting there, and also be patient and have a positive attitude. So another thing about that benevolent attitude is that you want to enjoy your practice, because if you want to stick with a habit, you need to hijack your brain chemicals, and the only way you're going to stick with that habit is if it feels good while you're doing it. So if it means that it only feels good for 5 minutes and then it stops feeling good, then maybe stop until you build up more of a tolerance to, you're like, I actually enjoy this. Or maybe, maybe for the first 5 minutes it feels kind of rough, but then you get in the zone, and in the second 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you're like, this feels good. That's what your brain needs in order to want to do something. So if you want to form a habit, you can't force yourself, discipline yourself, judge yourself to make it happen. Like, you have to figure out, how am I going to enjoy this? How's this going to feel good? You basically need to feel good while you're doing the things that are important to you. So figure out how to make that happen. Here is tip number 6, which could be a way to help make it happen, is in community and or outdoors. Practice in community. That means like with other people, being in a class, taking an online class if you're distancing. Even just like having a buddy that you could talk to your practice about could help. But there's something about moving in sync with other bodies that does stuff to our brains that is like prehistoric, that feels real good, and that releases just a lot of feel-good chemicals. To move in sync in time with other people is one of the greatest antidepressants that you can do. And another thing is to practice outdoors. So that's kind of unusual maybe, but it helps so much for you to enjoy your practice. If you're getting a little bit of sun, or if you're seeing the trees, or you're hearing the birds, or whatever. I love to go out into my yard and just practice out there, especially percussion, and I also dance out there too. And tip number 7 is according to your personality, your tendencies, your cycles. So if you are a morning person, practice in the morning. If you are an evening person, practice in the evening. Figure out a way that it fits into your natural tendencies. And we have longer periods of cycles as well. So if you have like a month-long cycle where like at the beginning of the month I feel really energetic, and at the end of the month I don't so much, then just embrace that, accept that, and allow that, and practice when you feel good. And then when you want to rest, just rest, and consider that being productive for you, because we need balance. So figure out your natural cycles and work with them. And one way that I figured out my natural cycles was by just observing, taking a lot of data about what I do and how I feel during the day. And then I figure out how to work with the flow that's already existing in my day and in my body. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about that in my live stream on Monday when I talk about channeling your creative muse. Because a big part of channeling your creative muse is allowing for some discipline. And in order to get that discipline, we need to work with our natural tendencies. So you may need an accountability partner, or you may be able to do it on your own, or you may need to know exactly why are we doing this? And then that's going to help you understand. So these are my 7 tips. Slowly, simply, with ease, with full focus, with a benevolent attitude, in community and or outdoors, and according to your personality, your tendencies, and your cycles. These are my tips for effective practice, and it should be fun, and also you should see improvement. That's why I love repetition. I do a lot of the same things over and over again, and I increase the complexity as I increase my skill. And that's a lot of how I teach technique practice. So when you repeat the same exercise, you can see, wow, I am improving, and it feels really good, and it's very encouraging. So if you would like to learn a little bit more about my approach to practice and choreography and improvisation and percussion, and just in general become a brilliant belly dancer, then please come to my private training that I am doing soon. To get your ticket to this private training, you just need to apply to my online coaching program at thecohesioncollective.com. And once you apply, those who are accepted will be invited to my private training.